1/9 of the state. There are only 8 governors' council. We represent 1/8 of the state. There is a 9th member of the governor's council whose only role under the Constitution, whose only official duty, is to be the president of the governor's council, and that is the lieutenant governor.
That's Karen, correct?
Karen Polito is lieutenant governor right now. That's correct.
So what exactly is the role of the governor's council?
Well, we do a number of things, but our most important role, the most important thing that we do, is the confirmation of judicial appointments. It's similar to what the Senate does in Washington when there's an opening in the federal courts. They'll hold hearings and vote to either confirm or deny confirmation for a particular candidate. That's our most important role. We also do approve a number of other appointments, such as clerk magistrates, parole board members, appellate tax board members, notaries, justice of the peace, workers' compensation judges, things of that nature. We're also responsible for approving any pardons or commutations of prison sentences, which the governor may recommend.
So that's a lot.
It sure is. Most people don't realize how much effort is put into the work that we do. Especially this year, we've had an extraordinary number of judicial openings. Surprisingly, 3 members of the Supreme Judicial Court unexpectedly retired early, which we've spent the entire summer basically holding hearings and confirming 3 new members of the Supreme Judicial Court. There are 2 mandatory retirements coming up on the Supreme Judicial Court, which we'll be approving next year. Just to put that in perspective, we're having a national crisis because one Supreme Court justice died, and there's been gridlock in Washington about replacing him. We're replacing 5 out of 7 Supreme Judicial Court justices in a 10-month period.
Wow.
It's an earthquake in the legal profession and in Massachusetts. Surprisingly, it hasn't gotten a lot of coverage from you folks in the media, but it is an incredibly important change. We've had a fairly progressive Supreme Judicial Court over the last several years. I think that's going to change a little bit, unfortunately, because we do have a Republican governor. Charlie Baker is not going to appoint the same justices that Deval Patrick would have appointed.
What does that mean for the listeners?
It means a lot, because when the 3 justices that we just approved are all in their early 50s. They will be on the mandatory retirement as age 70. They'll be on the Supreme Judicial Court for the next 20 years, which means that a Republican governor is replacing 5 out of 7 members of the Supreme Judicial Court who will be there affecting the lives of the people in the Commonwealth for decades to come, long after he's the governor, long after he's gone. And it's important because you have to look at some of the things that the Supreme Judicial Court has done over the last 10 years, including the Goodrich decision, legalizing gay marriage, which had a ripple effect not just across the country, but I think across the world in terms of the way people look at that. So I'm not sure that the new Supreme Judicial Court would have ruled the same way with respect to that decision. Our job is to make sure that we don't end up with Scalia or Alito, or at least as I see it, like justices on the Supreme Judicial Court. We're not going to get the progressives that we would like, but we can push back pretty hard to make sure we get some fairly moderate people, and we have. I will give the governor a lot of credit. Prior to being public that 3 of them were going to retire early, he called us in and got us involved in the process very early in terms of what types of people we could accept, what type of justices we'd be looking for. And we've come out with 3, I think, fantastic nominees that we've approved this summer. The first one was Frank Gaziano, who's a Superior Court judge, mainly sitting in Suffolk County. He's been a judge for a number of years. The second one was David Lowy, also a Superior Court judge, who originally was a district court judge in the Lynn District Court, and then became a judge in the Superior Court for a number of years. Somebody who really gets it, especially when it comes to the substance abuse issues. He was one of the founders of the drug court in the Lynn District Court. He understands that opiate addiction is a disease and not shouldn't be considered a crime, addiction itself, that is, and that he was way ahead of the curve on that. But long before we were talking about it publicly, he was doing things about it. And the third person is an African-American woman by the name of Kimberly Budd, who I pushed very, very hard to get on the bench, who initially didn't even want to apply for the job. And she is going to be getting sworn in shortly, which is going to be an historic event as well, because at least for a short period of time, for the first time in the history of the Commonwealth, we'll have 2 African-American female justices.
Do we have any African-American males on that?
We do not right now, because the Chief Justice, former Chief Justice of the Supreme Judicial Court, Roderick Island, retired 2 years ago, I think it was, replaced by Ralph Ganson. He was the first African-American member of the Supreme Judicial Court and the first African-American Chief Justice.
When was he sworn in?
He was sworn in 2010.
So 2010 was the first time that a Black male held that position?
That's correct.
Now that he's gone.
As Chief Justice.
As Chief Justice.
That's correct. He was on the court before that, I believe, yes.
So his position was not up until 70, or did he turn
till age
70?
70? He turned 70.
Oh, he turned 70.
And that's mandatory retirement in Massachusetts under the Constitution for judges.
Okay. So what do you look for when you don't necessarily appoint, you just say, these are the people we suggest, correct?
Well, no, the governor will make a nomination,
Okay.
which we have to approve. If we do not approve the nomination, the person doesn't get the appointment. And we do say no sometimes. Absolutely. There are some folks that the second nomination that Governor Baker made to the bench, we did not approve. She was not approved for the position in the courts.
Can you tell us why? Can you disclose the reason
Sure.
why you guys felt that she wasn't?
Absolutely. She was, and I'm not going to say her name because I don't want to embarrass her, but she was a what's called a bar advocate down in Barnstable County for a number of years, about 8 years. And in the course of our hearings, I pointed out the fact that my investigation revealed that she had never tried a single case, either bench trial or jury trial.
Why would he even present her to you if she's never tried a case?
That's not a question to ask me. That's one you're going to have to ask Governor Baker. But it's out of fairness, he was new in terms of nominating judges. It was a new administration. It was a new process that they had set up. But we did our job. We made sure that we screened her out. And I think that was important. You can't be a bar advocate and defend the poorest of the poor and never try a case. It's almost impossible.
Have you tried cases before?
I try cases on a weekly basis. I've been trying cases for 33 years. I cannot count how many cases jury trials I've tried. It's well over 1,000. I just don't know.
And what does trying a case look like?
Well, you know, it's not what you see on TV necessarily, but you know, you are in a courtroom and you have juries and you question witnesses, you present evidence, you argue to a jury and try to convince them that your position is the correct one. Primarily the cases I try criminal defense type cases. I do try a number of civil cases as well, but primarily criminal defense work is what I've been doing for the last 33 years.
Which it's 33 years of criminal defense.
I know I look younger.
Of course you do. Criminal defense. Why defend criminals?
Well, you're not necessarily defending a criminal, you're defending an accused.
Criminal.
Okay?
So they say, innocent until proven guilty.
That's right. And there are many, many people that are innocent. And there are many people that everybody deserves a defense. Everybody deserves a good defense. And it's not always about winning. Sometimes it's about getting the right thing, getting to the right result for the right reasons.
What is your proudest moment as far as cases are concerned, where you knew somebody was innocent, there wasn't, that much proof, but that gut feeling?
Well, I have to tell you, some of the cases that I personally feel the best about aren't criminal cases, they're civil cases. They're cases where people have received devastating injuries and personal injury type cases. I was talking to Amy a little while ago about a gentleman who had lost his leg in an accident. Not too long ago, I had a very serious case that was resolved involving a gentleman who was hit by a drunk driver, left with a devastating head injury. And naturally, the drunk driver didn't have a lot of insurance or assets, but we were able to reach back and look at where he was drinking and hold the bars responsible for what had happened and try to put some of his life back together. We were able to do that. So sometimes you can have a almost bigger impact on people's lives in a civil case than you can in a criminal type case.
Do you have a case that still resides within you? Because I know at 33 years old, I have decisions that I'm like, I was only 10, but I shouldn't have done that.
You're 33 years old? That's when I started practicing law, when you were born.
In 83?
In 83, 1983.
Aw, we're the same age. Do you have a case that really sits with you that you wish you would have done something differently?
Many cases. I mean, nobody tries a perfect case. Nobody handles a case in a perfect manner. And when you have a large volume of cases in your practice, naturally you're not gonna. You do the best you can with every case. Certainly, when you're looking back, when you're Monday morning quarterbacking, you look at things that you would wish you had done differently. Absolutely.
So you're not a public defender?
No, I am not. I'm strictly a private attorney.
A private attorney.
Yeah.
I
have a lot of respect for the folks that do that work. And I'm glad you raised that, because we have a number of very, very hardworking lawyers that are called bar advocates. They're private lawyers hired to represent the poorest of the poor. And we also have a number of what's called CPCS lawyers that are on the Committee for Public Counsel Services. And they're some of the most underpaid folks that are either working for the government or being paid by the government, who do the brunt of the work that needs to be done in the courts. It's almost absurd the amount of money that they're paid, and I want to advocate very strongly that they receive better salaries and better hourly pay for the work that they do. Many of my young lawyers burdened by huge student loans that would qualify for benefits because they're so underpaid. It's that bad. It's sad.
Wow. And you said you advocate for them to get...
In the Governor's Council, I brought that up many times. We had the head of the Committee on Public Counsel Services testify on behalf of a nominee one day, and I used that as an opportunity to raise that issue. She had just explained how burdensome student loans were, because she was in her 40s, and she indicated that she just refinanced her student loans so that she'd be paying them till she was almost 70 years old. Basically, for her whole career, her whole life, she'll be paying student loans.
That's insane.
It is insane. It's crazy.
Are you still paying student loans?
I am not. But I have to say a couple of things about that. When I went to school, it was a lot less expensive. I'm a lot older. But it's a terrible burden. It's a burden on district attorneys too. Many young lawyers that become district attorneys, they can't do the things that we all want to do, which is buy cars, buy homes, and, have families, and support them, because they're just burdened with the heavy loans and low pay.
Heavy loans and low pay. That sounds like some of the American people.
Well, the whole
country.
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
So you said that there are 8 of you.
That's correct.
The Governor's Council, there are 8 that represent 1/8 of the state, and there are 8 for re-election.
Everybody's up for re-election at the same time. I have 2 opponents. I believe that one member of the Governor's Council is not running for re-election. That's an open seat. Mike Albano from Western Massachusetts is running for sheriff out there.
Okay.
A couple of the members have Republican opponents, and I believe one other member has a primary opponent. The issue with the primary, by the way, and I think this is important to raise, not just in terms of the Governor's Council race, it's most people think the election's over because of the presidential primary.
Mm-hmm.
They don't realize that 2 weeks from today, there's a state primary.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some very important positions on the ballot. There's not a lot of contested seats on the ballot, but some very important positions on the ballot.
Let's talk about that.
Currently in Suffolk County, there is some Governor's Council races that are on the ballot, like my own. I believe Councilor Devaney has part of Suffolk County, and Councilor Juvenville, as well as Councilor Iannella, have parts of it. There's also a sheriff's race going on. A very important sheriff's race. Sheriff Tompkins is up for re-election as opponents. He's doing a very, very good job. And he works very, very hard, very progressive in terms of the way he runs the jails and dealing with substance abuse issues. And there's also an open seat for Registry of Deeds with a number of candidates running for that. So there's some important elections going on that can affect people's lives in a lot of ways, and it's important that people get out and vote. So we live in this great democracy. You're not part of it if you're not participating.
Absolutely. So for those that don't quite understand what it is as far as your position is concerned, you are running again.
Yes.
You're up for re-election, but what is it that you do personally, your day-to-day job?
My day-to-day job in terms of the council or in terms of being a lawyer?
In terms of the council.
Okay. In terms of the council, well, the council meets every Wednesday.
Okay.
I think we've had 2 or 3 assemblies that didn't take place this year. So we meet most Wednesdays. We have what's called the formal assembly, which is either the governor or the lieutenant governor presides over, where we vote on some important issues. We also hold hearings, usually on Wednesdays as well, sometimes on other days, in terms of potential nominees for the variety of positions that we're filling. There's an enormous number of positions open right now that have to be addressed. As I said, we just filled 3 Supreme Judicial Court positions. We're going to have 2 more. We're in the process of filling 4 openings on the appeals court. We've held hearings on 2 of them, voted on 1, I believe, and we have scheduled 2 other hearings. There are approximately 15 openings on the Superior Court. There are approximately 15 to 16 openings on the District Court, a number of Boston Municipal Court openings. There are 2 openings on the Parole Board, a number of openings on the various other courts and boards. I estimate that we have about 45 positions that we have to fill over the next several months that are incredibly important positions that will have a great impact on the people of Boston and the people of the Commonwealth. It's a lot of work. So we put in a lot of hours in terms of the job that we do.
What does the diversity look like as far as those positions are concerned? I know we've just learned that 16 years ago, there was the first African-American male. We currently have 2 female African-Americans.
6 years ago.
6 years, 2010. Yeah, you're right. 2010. I'm giving us 10 more years.
Well, I have to tell you, I'm a big believer in diversity. One of the appeals court folks that we just confirmed is Ken Desmond, Superior Court Judge, an African-American man from Malden, Massachusetts. I've raised the issue that less than 7% of the judiciary consists of African-American women.
So that's
very tiny
less than
number.
7% of all judges?
Yes.
are African American females.
That's correct.
In the state of Massachusetts.
That's correct.
Less than 7%.
That's correct. It's a huge issue, and there are a number of reasons I think for it. I think the biggest problem right now is that we have to recruit. We have to go out and really get people to apply for these judgeships. Get African American women to apply for it. The judiciary as a whole lacks diversity, especially in the probate court. I don't think that there's a single African American sitting in the probate court right now. I believe there's a couple of Hispanic judges, and that's a huge issue and something that has to be addressed.
Do we have the statistics on the Latinos that represent?
I don't have any statistics with me right now, but I'm going by my memory. We have appointed a number of Hispanic judges over the last several years. One that comes to mind is Cesar Chia, who's a district court judge, an excellent district court judge. The hope is that, and out of fairness to Governor Baker, I know that he's making a very strong effort to recruit people of color to the bench, to try to get them to apply. I know that there was a very strong push to get Kimberly Budd to apply for the Supreme Judicial Court by both the administration and people on the council and others, and everybody's very pleased at that, obviously. But they are pushing it. I encourage, there are lawyers out there that have been practicing for the 10 years.
And that's a requirement. You have to practice for 10 years.
That's under the executive order, yes. You don't, in theory, you could graduate law school and become a judge, but practically speaking, you have to have at least 10 years.
You have to at least try a case.
Yeah, well, that's my litmus test. Some judges get put up for positions who haven't tried cases, but I think that's very, very important that they have, depending on where they are, where they're coming from, and what court they're going to. But usually, yes, you want people who've tried cases.
So let me ask you a quick question, because we've been having conversations recently about child support. This whole week, we've actually been having conversations about child support and about judges that are not doing their job, in a sense. Do you appoint family court judges?
Yes, we do. I don't practice in that area. It's not an area that I've, over the last 33 years, have had much personal experience in terms of going in there. However, we do vet probate court judges, and I can tell you that there are two members of the council that question potential nominees very hard when it comes to those issues, which is Bob Juveville and Chris Iannella.
Bob Juveville, because I just want to give a shout out to those that are working on our behalf. Bob,
no, absolutely. You know, they really they've had experience in that area, and they push very hard in terms of questioning nominees about alimony, child support, visitations, joint parenting, things of that nature that are obviously very important, that all the counselors do, that we try to vet, we try to get people's philosophy when it comes to those issues out to the forefront, and what their position is prior to voting on their nomination.
What about the fact that we know across the nation, blacks and browns are getting sentences that their peers of other races would not receive?
It's a disgrace. It's a disgrace on so many levels, especially when it comes to the death penalty. I mean, the racial disparity.
Which is not here in Massachusetts.
We do not have a death penalty in Massachusetts at this time, and hopefully never will. But across this country, I do not believe in the death penalty at all. I'm an adamant opponent of the death penalty. And it's certainly the way it's been implemented across the patchwork set of rules that we have, and the patchwork set of laws that we have, where some states have a death penalty and some states don't, as well as the way that it is implemented and imposed. There's no question that it impacts people of color more than it does other folks. And it's well established that if you're an African American that murders a Caucasian, the odds of you getting the death penalty in those death penalty states is significantly higher. It's a disgrace, period.
How does your position combat that fact that?
Well, when we're vetting, when I'm vetting candidates, and I raised this issue with the candidates that we had, Kimberly Budd made it very clear that she doesn't believe in the death penalty. Both David Lowy and Frank Gaziano indicated that they favored the death penalty under extremely limited circumstances, but both indicated that the likelihood of them supporting any type of death penalty statute was not strong given the racial impact that it has. So I was comfortable with that, with their answers, but not happy with their answers, I'll say, but comfortable that they would not support a death penalty bill if one were to come up in Massachusetts. So it does impact, we do have an impact on that on the council. It is an issue that's important. We have one member of the council, Jen Case, is a Republican from Worcester, who is an advocate of the death penalty. I am not going to vote for somebody who I truly believe would help reinstate the death penalty in Massachusetts, period. I wouldn't vote for somebody who didn't believe in a woman's right to choose, period. You know, we talk about litmus tests. There's nothing wrong with having those because we have to, people say, oh, you shouldn't have litmus tests for nominees, but I disagree with that.
And for those who don't know, what is a litmus test?
Well, it's where you draw a line. It's if some candidate were to come up and say that they were against the woman's right to choose, I couldn't vote for them because I think that's an incredibly important issue that I can't believe we're still talking about in 2016. But we are. It comes up in our hearings. It comes up nationally all the time, and I want to make sure that whoever I vote to put on the Supreme Judicial Court is going to protect the woman's right to choose. I want to make sure that the person that I vote to put on the Supreme Judicial Court is going to vote down a death penalty bill. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't think that if you have personal beliefs that go beyond the law, that go to basically moral beliefs, that there's nothing wrong with using that as a litmus test, as a point where you draw a line, where you can support someone and not support someone.
So forgive my ignorance, but is there a litmus test?
Well, I don't think there's anything ignorant about it.
There is. Is there a litmus test that gauges one's bigotry or bias?
Well, I think, I don't know, I guess is the simple answer. Certainly the issue of racism comes up in some of our hearings, particularly when it comes to racial profiling, which clearly happens. I had a discussion with someone earlier this morning about that. When Ken Desmond was up for the appeals court, a sitting Superior Court judge at the time, now a member of the appeals court, an African American from Malden, as I indicated. He was one of the most compelling parts of his testimony. And by the way, there's a gentleman by the name of Patrick McCabe who puts all of our hearings online.
Okay. Will we be able to get that we can?
You can access that. Absolutely. Okay. They're not video. They're recorded. But the most compelling part of his testimony was how he spoke of being brought up as an African American male, and actually Kim Budd talked about the different perspective that she would have bringing to the court, being brought up as an African American female. But he talked about while he was a Superior Court judge, sitting as a Superior Court judge, he would get stopped for no reason at all in a traffic stop. Once they found out he was a judge, they just let him go
because they didn't want to be tried themselves.
Well, I don't know about that, but it just shows you that it's still out there. It's something that we have to address. It's something that we raise at the council. And it's something that I think it's very, very helpful and good that nationally we're having a conversation about it.
Absolutely.
Because that's the start to fixing it, to fixing the problem, and there is a problem.
Absolutely. So you said earlier that there are 2 opponents running for your seat.
There are, that's correct.
Just out of fairness, can we name these 2 opponents?
You're not supposed to do that with your mind. There's a gentleman from the North End by the name of Steve Borelli, who's an assistant court magistrate on leave of absence, and there's a gentleman by the name of Richard DeMayo out of East Boston who's running. I always have an opponent.
You always have an opponent?
Absolutely. I come from a very active district, as I indicated. It includes parts of Boston, all of Cambridge, all of Somerville, and it's an interesting district in Lynn as well. It's a very politically active area, and it's a great democracy, and everybody's got a right to run.
Absolutely.
I run on my record.
Your record, which is 33 years strong.
Well, on the council, it's 6 years, but my record as a lawyer is 33 years strong. Yes.
And what do you think is your strength to keeping your position, or the reason why your position should remain your position?
Well, I think number one, I've done a good job. I've spent a lot. I've put a lot of effort and time into it, and I think I've had an enormous impact on the judiciary over the last 6 years. A record number of the judges have been replaced in that time. I voted, as you indicated in your opening, I voted on well over 200 judges. There were only like 468, I think, in the state, from the Supreme Judicial Court to the Juvenile Court. So I've voted. I will have voted by the end of the year, I think, on over half of the sitting judiciary. So I think that I've had a great impact. One of the things that happens, by the way, is when we say no, when we shoot a candidate down like the one I referred to earlier, it pushes the governor's office to nominate better quality candidates.
So what happens when you say no? Is that...
That's it.
So if all 8 don't agree?
No, it's a majority rule.
Okay.
The lieutenant governor can be a tiebreaker. We had a tie a few weeks ago on a nominee. Then the governor comes in and presides, and the lieutenant governor votes. But the lieutenant governor can only vote when the governor's in the room presiding.
Okay. And that deal breaker worked in your favor or against your vote?
In that particular instance, I voted in favor of the nominee. I thought he was well qualified.
And he did not get the position?
He did get the position.
He did get the position.
The lieutenant governor came in and voted, and it was a 5-4 vote.
Have you seen anyone be benched that you really like? You do not deserve that
Benched?
position.
Are we talking about football?
No.
Huh?
No.
I'd love to talk about that. I'm all excited about the season coming up.
Really? Because I am vehemently against.
Football?
A non-profit organization that makes billions of dollars and then gives away pennies.
Well, some things have to just be fun, just to watch.
Do you know? So I am a huge believer in energy, and I actually worked as a bartender at Gillette. And at Gillette,
I know she looked familiar.
One of the things, all of that energy in one place. If we could focus not on a ball, but put it towards, anything. All of that energy.
Some things just have to be for fun.
No, it can't.
Yes, it has to be. We have to have fun in life. In sports, they're part of fun.
Absolutely, but not at the expense of a non-profit organization. I don't know how they even got that status. But yet there's 501(c)(3)s that are out here that don't have that title, that are working their ass off and deserve that title.
Well, I don't know that. I don't know that the Patriots organization itself is a non-profit organization.
No, the NFL is.
Well, the NFL. Okay. Well, it's a not-for-profit, I guess, organization, but I'm not familiar with that part of it. I just don't know. I only know that I like to watch football on Sunday. Sorry.
And
we all have our fun.
If
If you don't like football, don't vote for me, okay?
That means you just won, huh?
I think so. I think I'll get more votes than I won't.
I believe it. So far, I like your energy. Again, I'm a ball of energy.
At this time of the morning, I think I'm doing pretty good.
Of course.
I'm awake, barely.
What I want to reiterate for the listeners why it's important, because I do remember 2 years ago when it was time to vote, and I'm looking at all of these names, and I think I know a lot, but I'm looking at these names and I'm like, I don't know who I'm voting for. I don't know why these names are even on this ballot. Why is it important for people to get informed and to know and to understand that you're going to see names on these ballots next month, and you need to do your due diligence now because we only have a couple days.
Right. 2 weeks we have from today in terms of the primary. I think it is important. I mean, that's what our democracy is all about. I mean, you have a passion for a lot of issues. You want to make sure that the people that are getting elected share that passion, or at least share that view towards those issues. Otherwise, people are going to get elected who don't feel the same way. And I think that that's what democracy is about, is making sure that we get the people elected who share our views. And Massachusetts is a progressive state. We happen to have a Republican governor who's fairly moderate, but still a Republican. He's a Republican that certainly you can work with. He's somebody who's, to the governor's credit, he's somebody who listens and you can talk to. Because one of the interesting things about the job that I have as a governor's counselor is we spend a significant amount of time with the governor and the lieutenant governor on a weekly basis, which isn't something that a state senator or a state representative would usually do. They have a different role. So you have a lot of access, you spend a lot of time, and you get a feel for what the people are like and whether they're willing to compromise and listen and talk. And Lieutenant Governor Polito and Governor Baker do. They're pretty easy to work with. I do miss Deval Patrick. I had a lot of fun with him.
Really?
Oh yeah, I miss him very much. He was a good guy. He was a good governor, great governor.
Do you have a governor's story as far as Deval Patrick is concerned?
No, I'm gonna stay away from that. But he was a very entertaining, very energetic. Talk about full of energy. I don't think I've ever met anybody full of any more full of energy than him.
Wow, he's actually my favorite too. Deval Patrick. I swear he's Haitian now. He won't admit it though. As far as the governor's council, as far as appointing judges, as far as law is concerned, we have some laws that are on the books that, I don't know if there's a website that talks about like old laws that make no sense at all. And there's one, I believe, in South Carolina that you can't walk on the left side of the road with your horse on Sunday.
I'll have to remember that the next time I go there. Leave my horse home.
Are there laws here in Massachusetts?
Oh, I can't think of anything in particular at the moment, but there are a number of laws on the books that are archaic, that and obsolete, some of which have been declared unconstitutional, but technically they're still on the books. Some very, very funny and bizarre ones.
So the question I was going to ask, is there any laws that on the top of your head that if given that power you would alter immediately?
Well, I'm not a legislator. That's not what we do. We don't make law. We don't pass bills. We don't.
It was just hypothetically.
But off the top of my head, if there was a particular law that I would want to overturn, not so much in a serious note, not some quirky law, but I think mandatory sentences in drug cases have resulted in tragic sentences for people, disparate sentences that are just grossly unfair. And if I were to change anything, I would eliminate mandatory minimum sentences.
Come a little closer, because we can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
No.
I never had a problem with that. People not being able to hear me.
But I do want you to repeat that. So
What I said was, if there was one law that I would change if I had the power to do it, and I don't, that I would eliminate mandatory sentences for drug offenses. I think that it's another instance where they're grossly unfair. They have a bias against people of color. They seem to have the greatest impact of people of color, just like the death penalty. And they result. Most judges, by the way, are opposed to them. Most of the nominees that we've vetted over the last 6 years do not agree with mandatory minimum sentences. They want to be able to look at each individual that comes before them and try to figure out what the best penalty is and the best way to rehabilitate people is. And mandatory sentences keep them from being able to do that. What a mandatory sentence does, by the way, is simply takes the discretion away from the judge and gives it to the prosecutor. That's all it does, because it's the charging authority. They decide what they're going to charge you with. They can take it away anytime they want and give you a lesser charge and no mandatory. So basically, your prosecutor becomes your judge at the same time. That's what it does. It's just grossly unfair.
That is disgusting. Which it leads me to my next question, because one of the things you said earlier is you guys also, what is the word, clements? You guys?
Yes, we do. We approve, if a governor were to make a recommendation for either a pardon or a commutation of a prison sentence, we would have to approve that. They're very different. Pardons basically forgive a crime after somebody has served their sentence, usually after they've gone through the judicial process. And they're usually used for people who have committed a crime at one point in their life, and after a very long period of time of living crime-free life and becoming a productive member of society, they get their name cleared. And it can also have impacts on them in a number of ways, like being able to get jobs, sometimes being able to carry a firearm, which they may need for a job. The firearms is a discussion for another day, but a commutation of a prison sentence is
commutation.
Yes, it's where the sentence is reduced so that they can get released from prison earlier. They happen in a number of situations, like if you had a first-degree murder, a sentence could get commuted to a second-degree murder, simply making them eligible for parole. One of my big gripes with Deval Patrick that I had with him was he didn't do enough of them. He didn't commute enough prison sentences. He didn't grant enough pardons. He only did, in his term, 8-year term, I believe, 3 pardons and 1 commutation.
Really?
Prior to that, I don't think there had been one in Massachusetts for 10 years. And he did it at the end of his term. The commutation was an African-American woman who there was a lot of controversy around that commutation. I advocated for it very strongly. She had been sentenced to 7.5 years in state prison for a relatively minor drug offense. She had served about, I think, 2 years of that term, had a motion for new trial allowed, and was released. The prosecutor appealed that. She was on the street for 2 or 3 years and then lost her appeal. During that 3-year, and had to go back to jail for basically another 4 years. Yeah, she was a drug addict too. But in that 3-year period of time when she was on the street, not by virtue of court order, but just on her own, she turned her life around.
And they threw her back in jail.
In an incredible way. She turned her life around. She got into programs, got herself clean, got herself a job, got herself housing, and got active in trying to get other addicts to turn their lives around. She did everything that we hope someone can do who's going through the criminal justice system. She went back to jail, and she was back there for about a year when the governor recommended the commutation. The district attorney's office showed up at our hearing on that commutation. And if you're going to listen to one hearing where I spoke very forcefully in favor of it, that's the one I suggest you listen to.
I would love the link to that.
But the commutation of her sentence would simply to make it a non-mandatory sentence. so that she became parole eligible. Out on the street, but still supervised, so she would continue to make the progress that she made. I happened to bump into her sister, who was at the hearing about a year afterwards, and she told me she was doing very, very well. So that's a situation where a commutation would be appropriate. Governor Baker, I don't believe, has even put his guidelines in place for people to apply for pardons or commutations. If
I feel like she should have got a pardon for that one, to have to to come off into the streets and turn your life around and then try to help other addicts and then get thrown back in jail for another year.
Well, no, she was thrown back for another 4 years, but she was out in a year. Yeah, maybe, but not yet. You know,
not yet.
Not yet. I mean, you're not going. It's a long recovery's a long stretch. And let her keep doing what she's doing. Maybe someday.
So you can always ask for a pardon, correct?
You can. The Constitution says you can. A governor can recommend a pardon, but not until the judicial process is completed.
Oh, okay.
You can't.
I got you.
On the federal level, the president can pardon you before you are even charged. In Massachusetts, you would have to be charged, convicted, and then the governor could recommend a pardon.
Okay. Last question, because we actually ran out of time. As far as pardons and commutations are concerned, one of the things that we've seen here in Massachusetts was marijuana be this, huge drug charge, and then we see it as a medicinal use. Now you can go down to Medwell in Brockton and get your medical marijuana card.
Can you give me that address? No,
yes, I do. Actually, I can. They're located in Brockton. I'll get the number for you and everything.
There's a big debate about marijuana. There's a referendum on the ballot in November to completely legalize it in Massachusetts. I don't have any. I don't believe that marijuana should be a criminal offense. But I don't know that we want to encourage people to use it either. I think that. I think it should be the use of it should be discouraged as opposed to encouraged. But I also don't think it should be a crime at all.
So how would it work as far as law is concerned if it does become legal, but yet we have jails filled with people for whatever crime, whether it was the selling or the distribution or the buying?
I don't think in the state level we have people in jail for possessing marijuana at this time, because it's been possession of marijuana has been decriminalized for a long time at this point. There may be some people in jail for selling marijuana in the state courts. I don't think there's a lot of them. I'd be surprised if there were. Certainly if this referendum passed, I think that they would be eligible for relief from the courts or from the potentially by way of a commutation or some type of pardon when it's no longer a crime. So I think that it's not very common for people, absent a school zone violation, for people to go to jail for selling, even selling marijuana. But it does happen.
Which there was some controversy as far as the school zone was concerned as well, because of the overlapping of schools and like this. You can't really turn around in Boston and not be in a school zone.
That's right. Once again, it's an area. It's an area of the law that needs to be reformed. It's a mandatory sentence that shouldn't be there. The intent was good. You don't want people selling drugs to school children. But most of the people who go to jail for school zone violations aren't selling drugs to children. They're just near a school, and it's once again with an area where there's a great deal of racial disparity in terms of the impact and low income. Not just racial, but low-income folks, because when you get to areas of my district, like Lynn, like Chelsea, like parts of Boston, like Everett, where I grew up, there aren't many areas that aren't in the school zone. Whereas if you're out in Linfield, where I live now, and Wellesley, some of the wealthier areas, there certainly are, because there's more space. So it's just unfair, period, and it's a law that just should be repealed.
So last question, because I can only imagine that somebody is asking this. Your last name is?
Kennedy.
Any relation?
The only thing I have in common is the last name and a big stomach. I am not related. That's it.
And the sense of humor? I enjoyed you, Terry.
Thank you for having me on. I enjoyed it very much.
I hope you enjoy. You know what? I would like to, in the future, have conversations with you about the Constitution.
I'll read it. I'll see if I can get a copy of it. Maybe the gentleman that spoke at the convention can let me borrow his when Trump's done with it.
But as far as like Massachusetts Constitution and understanding our state and understanding our laws, like I think, because I'm very ignorant when it comes to the law.
Like I said earlier, there's nothing ignorant about it.
And I would like for us to learn more. And I would like for you to help us.
I'd be glad to.
And I would be glad to give you this card so you can get $25 off your medical marijuana evaluation.
Oh, no, I'm going to pass on that. Thank you. I'm good. I was just kidding on that one. Come on.
Terry Kennedy, you guys, he's up for re-election. He is one of 8 of the Governor's Council. Please give us your information and how we can reach you, and if we have any questions. Sure.
You can certainly email me at twkennedylaw@gmail.com. And I also have a Facebook page, which is elect Terry Kennedy 2016, which you can contact me through as well.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I want to give a huge shout out to our sponsors. Yes, Medwell Health Centers. You can go to 820 Pearl Street in Brockton, Massachusetts, and get your $25 off your medical marijuana evaluation. That's Medwell at 820 Pearl Street in Brockton. Give them a call at 774-517-5195 and let them know that TaylaAndre sent you, and you'll get your $25 off. Also, FaithsNaturalsBeauties.com. I love everything she makes. Don't forget the Pum Pum Wash. Don't forget the Buddy Wash as well. So we got that in the mix, as well as the activated charcoal for your teeth whitener, the foot mask, the activated charcoal face wash, the activated charcoal body wash. Why is that important? Because it detox your body. That is what the activated charcoal does. It draws out those toxins and cleanses you from the outside in. Stop putting things on your skin that you cannot eat. So really quickly, Anari was, she has this body spray, sort of like a little mist. And Anari was like, Mommy, it smelled like candy. So I sprayed it in my mouth like a mouth drop. And he was just like, it didn't taste too bad. All of her products are natural, so they are edible. I don't advise you to eat them. But if you're a weirdo like Anari, you might try it. Don't forget Dr. Asika Sauce. She will cleanse your whole life at the Raw Natural Health and Education Center. That's 1349 Blue Hill Ave. I know, men, you do not want to get your colon clean, not in my booty. But I need you to understand that it's so, for your health, it's what you need. Come off your manhood for a little while and get it done. I promise you'll thank me. Aside from that, don't forget ZC Boston has some of the best sushi in the entire city, 801 Mass Ave. And they deliver all the way up Blue Hill to Columbia Road. They deliver until 1 a.m., free delivery, free parking, and half-price sushi on the weekends. That is ZC Boston, 801 Mass Ave, directly across the street from Boston Medical Center. Last but not least, you know Dr. Umar Johnson is coming September 24th, and he is bringing with him Dr. Claude Anderson. Are you ready? Because I am. Tickets are $30. I will post all the information on the Wake Up with TaylaAndre page. TaylaAndre. I love you. I appreciate you. And I hope you have an amazing day. Mwah! Thank you, Mr. Terry Kennedy. He cringed when I said the Pum Pum Wash, y'all. I really do love you. I appreciate you. I hope you guys have an awesome day. As far as my baby, I'm thinking about my baby that called earlier, and she's like, Tayla, you know, sometimes I'm listening to these stories and I can't stomach them. I want to let you know that I apologize for giving you the raw. I apologize for giving you the real, but I will not stop. I will not, and I promise that I won't. Aside from that, I also want to address one more time those choppers that were flying low. If you don't like it, if you have questions, 311 is the answer. Go find out. Call and say this is not okay. I want to know what is this drill for? How long is this going to last for? They said it should last a week. We got a couple more days, but what exactly are they doing so low to houses? I've never seen anything like this in my life, and I don't think it's appropriate. If you have questions, ask them. This is your country, baby, your tax dollars. Start acting like it. Big City 101.3 FM. Nahemi, thank you, baby.
No problem.
Thank you.
Thank
Nice
you.
meeting you.
I'll see if I can try to get a little one for you.
Okay, give me 5 seconds because I want to hug.
Who goes on next?
Daddy. He comes on at 8.
Who's good? Music or something to do?
Mm-hmm.
That comes on at 8. The life management.
Which I was on for a few years.
Thank you for having me on.
Thank you.
It was fun.
Your honesty.
That was fun.
Yeah.
Did you tell me the shit? Huh?
Thank you.
It's something on it.
All the time.
Oh, I'm October.
She's gonna get the work, she's gonna get fired.
I got 2 hours.
So I said,
Yes.
yeah. Oh, yeah. That was mine.
So October 19th, you guys can for BlackLivesMatter. Yeah. I'll dump stuff on this thing, and
I
then
know.
to yeah, he's on our channel. So like after voting and we're kind of watching in this state because that's the time they vote. Yes, after yes, yeah, a lot of states don't really you're done. Yes, you can. They don't know that. Wait, is it one person?
I don't know.
As to why we get on roll, on your out of that. And it's like it was less fun when it was Virginia, the governor,
They tried like 80,000 people. And then they said, no, you can't do it. You have to do one at a time.
I love it.
I can see it. So I don't want anything to do with it. If she makes me there,
Ah, oh, I love that.
my wife was mad at me.
You waited 2.5 hours. I already gave you that.
I was an asshole. Okay. Bye. Thank you.
Oh, you guys are still on. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Mwah. So that means you guys are still on too, huh? Hey, Pooh. Mwah. I'm sorry I left y'all hanging. I hope you have an amazing day today. Look at my hair. Woo. Craziness all over the place. Have an amazing day.